Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be looking at the chapter 2 to 4 exam test prep problems. So let's begin. Alright, let's begin with the chapter 2 problems here. And our first problem tells us that we have this company, Frank's Customized Furniture, and we use, the company uses a job cost accounting system, job order cost accounting system. So remember that that is going to be applicable for companies that produce customized products or customized services, etc. And in this example, this is our first year of operations. We have no beginning balances. And as of August 31st, our the business has incurred the following costs here. So we've got materials and factory, factory labor. And this is our, essentially, if you want to think of it kind of like materials requisition sheet here, and then our time ticket system, essentially, that's kind of the information given on this. We've got 3 different jobs that have costs accumulated here during the year, and then some indirect costs for overhead items down below. Okay, so let's look at our background information below, and we need this information here. So the predetermined overhead rate is 50% of the direct labor cost. During the year, jobs 1 and 2 were completed. Job 3 was not completed, but job 1 was sold for $9,000. The sale was on credit, and we're going to show a accumulating journal entry to show the effect of the $7,000 of raw materials purchased on account. And this is the raw materials there, but we want to see the accumulating entry, so just the purchase piece, basically. And then we want to have our assigning journal entries shown. And that's going to be for the actual assignment of the entries to the specific jobs. And we're going to assign the materials, the labor, and the manufacturing overhead of all the jobs to WIP. So we're going to show that in journal entry form. And let's see what else. We're going to record the completion and sale of the finished job. I think there's only just that one job, one was sold. And finally, what was the ending balance in WIP as of August 31st? And what jobs does that work relate to? So a number of different tasks to do here, essentially. And so let's begin. Okay, so I think I'm just going to do my journal entries off to the side here. I'll just say account, debit, and credit. Just going to do a little formatting real quick. Okay, so a little makeshift. No, why don't I put these up higher too, just to get some more space. Oh. Okay, so we've got all the information that we need, essentially. And let's do our journal entries here that I asked for. So we're just going to demonstrate the $7,000 of the raw materials purchase. And it was on account, I believe it says, yeah, so we've got raw materials. And then on account, we've got accounts payable. Instead, and indent our credit, and we'll say purchase RM, just for a little explanation there. Okay, and that was $7,000. All right, so that would be our raw materials purchase, and that's the only one that it asked to show. for our assigning entries now, we need to make the necessary journal entries to record materials, labor, and manufacturing overhead costs of all jobs to WIP. And so one thing we need to know here is that 50% of the direct labor cost is going to be assigned to each job, essentially applied. And we're using, 50% of direct labor costs. So we're going to take our factory labor for each one of the jobs times 0.5 or 50%. And you can see those amounts there. I'm just dragging over this total. So the total amount is $32.50. And I'm going to do a format painter just to get that in the same format there. Ooh, and then we can just add across. We don't want to pick up the job number 1, but add the 3 across. Okay, now we've got our totals by job with the overhead. Again, that was at 50% of direct labor costs, so we just take the total direct factory labor, multiply it by 50%, and then we're going to do journal entries that kind of underlie the amounts here. So the first one we want to do is our raw materials, and so we can do these all in totals. They're detailed here, but we're just going to do them by the totals down below. So total materials, or direct materials, to go into WIP, work in process, was 7,000, which we can see here. And then the amount that went to our manufacturing overhead account, remember as a debit, is the 1,200. And remember when we do our assigned, it's the credit, and the actual amount that we incurred is on the debit side. Or sorry, on the I'm saying that sorry, I'm kind of saying that backwards. Let's post this real quick. The actual overhead costs incurred go on the debit side, and then the overhead applied, which we will record later, goes on the credit side. Okay, so here's our journal entry to assign our materials. And we'll just put assign materials. We don't need anything fancy there, but just something to remember that we need explanations on our journal entries. And so there, remember that is the indirect. It goes to the overhead, and then the amount that is direct goes to our work in process. Okay, so now we need to assign labor. I'm going to steal this journal entry and copy and paste it because it's going to be very similar. But our total direct labor cost is 6,500. Our overhead is 700. There you can see indirect down here. And then instead of raw materials, we are going to be crediting factory payroll. And we'll say assign factory labor cost. Okay, so now we've got our 6,500 into WIP. We've got 7,000. You can kind of see that reflects. Remember that the subledger of this is basically the subledger of the WIP account. So everything that's reflected here should be in the WIP account. So we've got the 7,000 and the 6,500. Excuse me. Now we just need the manufacturing overhead piece. The amount applied, not the actual amount down here that we've already been debiting. Okay, so like I said, we're going to be debiting WIP for the applied overhead using our predetermined overhead rate. And we're going to be crediting the manufacturing overhead account. And we'll say to apply overhead. And we can see the total right here. It's 3250, or just to show that again, how we could arrive at that amount, we can take our total direct factory labor times 0.5, so it says 50% to get us 3250, which that agrees. Here's the total, and those agree, but then the detail under, behind that total then is here by job, as we're doing, remember, job costing here. Okay. And then we've got our credit to the overhead account. Okay, so that's all of our assigning entries. And then we need to record the completion and sale of the finished goods. So it tells us in our entry, our detail here, jobs 1 and 2 were completed. So we had $15,000 of completed cost moved to finished goods. So let's do that entry first. I'm just going to say finished goods, FG. I'll write it out, just finished goods inventory. Right, it's an inventory, it's an asset. And WIP is going to be our credit for reducing WIP and increasing finished goods here. And that is the total of these two jobs, as it tells us in here that those two jobs were completed. And we'll just say to record job 1 and 2 completion. Okay. And then further, it tells us that so job 3 is still in WIP, so WIP would have a $1,750 ending balance for cost, and then that'll be our beginning. If we go further, into after August, this is as of August 31st. But to record the sale, we are going to record our sales entry, and it was sold for $9,000. So we've got accounts receivable, we've got sales revenue, we've got cost of goods sold, and we've got, I'm just going to steal it from above instead of typing it out, finished goods inventory. And these are our two credit accounts. So it tells us that it was $9,000 sales. That was our revenue that we sold it for, tells us here. And then the cost of that job, and this is, which job is this? Job number 1, right? So it says, yeah, job 1. Okay, so the cost of job 1 here was $4,000. I'm just going to link to there. So in other words, we earned $5,000 of profit on that job. We'll just say to record sale of job 1. Okay, and then what does it ask us? Okay, it asks us what is the ending balance in WIP as of August 31st, and which job does this relate to? And we just answered that question above. These two have been, this one has been sold, this is in finished goods now, and this remains in WIP. So that would be our total debit balance is $1,750. And then, like I said, going forward, we'll continue to assign more costs until that job number 3 is completed. All right, that is question number 1. Let's take a look down here at question number 2. Okay, so in this question, we've got this company, Carl's Custom Cabinets, and on April 1st, we have a work in process inventory of 10,800, raw materials inventory 6,000, overhead has $1,000 credit balance, and we've got some subledger data for WIP at the beginning of the month is here, and we've got to do some tasks here. Okay, so let's take a look here. Let's see if I can, can't quite get it all on one page, but that's okay. Okay, so for our accumulating journal entries, and I'm just going to take this little ledger and just bring this down so we've got somewhere to put information into. A little higher there. And I'm just going to clear this all out. and just clear out the formatting there. Okay, so accumulating costs. So what journal entries are required when raw materials of 3,000 are purchased on account? So again, I'm going to just take that journal entry there, because that's the same, it's just a different amount here in this instance. $3,000. 2,000 is paid for repairs on factory equipment. So now we've got some actual overhead costs. Remember, actual overhead costs go to the debit side of our overhead account. That was 2,000, and it just says paid, so I'm going to assume the credit is to cash. And we'll say factory repairs. Remember, general repairs to factory equipment, that's an overhead cost, remember? Bill of $1,000 was received for monthly factory utilities. So again, that's an overhead cost. It says the bill was received. It doesn't say it was paid yet, so we're going to go to accounts. Payable for our credit there. And what else? Factory rent is paid. So I'm going to take this journal entry. And that was 2,000 there. Oh, this should be 1,000, sorry. 2,000 for repairs, 1,000 for utilities, and rent of 2,000. Okay, so we've got that. It says it's paid, so cash there. 10,500 is paid to our total staff for our factory salaries and wages, etc. So we're going to say factory payroll expense is our debit, and we'll just say 10,500 there. Factory, and we'll just say factory payroll. Okay, one thing I'm going to do, I think this will be useful, is to create a little T account for our overhead, just so we can kind of keep track of that, and I think that'll help us analyze if we're under or over applied at the end, and maybe help you all continue to understand that concept and how it works. So all of our debits to overhead here are for actual expenses. Remember, the debit side is actuals, and then the credit side will be our applied amount based on our predetermined overhead rate. Okay, so let's see here. We're down into the assigning process. A review of material requisition slips and time tickets show what we've got here. And now we need some journal entries to assign these costs. Okay, so we've got total raw materials assigned of 5,500 to the jobs and 1,000 to overhead. So let's do that first. I'm just going to do WIP, and then RM for raw materials and overhead. And so we're going to be taking 6,500 total out of raw materials, with 1,000 of that going to overhead, and how much? 5,500 going to, as you can see here, to the jobs. So let's go back up to our overhead and debit that. Make that a little longer. And we'll say to assign materials. Okay, I'm going to make that a little longer there, and then let's look at our time tickets, and we're going to say to assign factory payroll. So here we're going to credit factory payroll expense, and it was a total of 10,500, and we're going to put 8,500 into WIP, into the specific jobs, and 2,000 to overhead. Okay, so now we're on to the overhead piece. We've got materials, direct labor, and overhead. And let's see here. I'm going to make a little chart off to the side here. We're going to say Larry. No, these are the Three Stooges are 3 jobs. So this will be jobs, direct materials, direct labor, and MO, our manufacturing overhead. I'm just taking this information off here. I just wanted to put it in a Excel format here so we can do some calculations with it, etc. And not just have it over there in a screenshot. Okay, just do some little formatting here. So we got 1,000, 2,000, 1,000, 700. Oh, and I guess I should say that the, let's see, materials inventory, we started with $1,000 overhead credit balance, it says, in overhead. So I'm just keeping that in there. Okay. So let's see where we are. Okay, so this is our beginning balances by job at April 1st. And then we're going to add amounts into these, just our beginning balances. And this is what that's what we were just doing with these journal entries. And then it tells us how much we're going to add in here. And so if this is our beginning, then our additions. So we had, let's see here, 1,000 to, sorry, let's do this. I'm going to take the same exact format basically here. So that's our beginning. Just going to make these kind of clearly delineated. This is our additions. And then we'll have ending balance here. Zoom out just a little bit so we can see this better. Okay, so our additions and here we're taking these off the material requisition sheet. We have 1,000 for Larry. We have 1,000 for Curly. We have 2,000 for Mo. Oh, we have one more job we need to. There's one job that was started during the month, so let's insert that. And this is going to be Joe. So it was all zeros to begin, but now we have 1,500. So you can see that's just straight off here, adds up to the 5,500. And we're good to go. Okay, now labor, we've got 2,000. We've got 3,000 to Curly. We've got 1,500 to Mo and 2,000 to Joe. There to get 8,500, and that matches here. And you can see the journal entries that reflect the same thing over here. Okay, and now we need to just do our, I'll wait for that. We need to calculate our predetermined overhead rate here. It tells us that estimated overhead, remember we do this before the year even begins. So we had 70,000 estimated overhead, and it was applied on direct labor dollars estimated at 100,000. Estimated direct labor, 100,000. And that means that our overhead rate per direct labor dollar is 70 cents per direct labor dollar. And so we're going to apply the overhead. And let's go with direct labor times our 0.7. So that gives us 1,400. Same thing here, direct labor during the month times the rate gives us 2,100. Direct labor times the rate applied of that amount, and then direct labor times there gives us, oh, my sum isn't working right. That's good. Make sure that's all picked up. Okay, so 5,950 of assigned overhead. And so we can do, let's do our journal entry for that. So we're just going to need, I'm going to copy this. So this is going to be into WIP with manufacturing overhead as the credit. I'm just going to link over here to the 5950. And we'll say to apply manufacturing overhead. And then again, that's going to be a credit there. Okay, so we're pretty far along now. Let's just get our ending balances then. And so if we can just take, I'm going to do it in my little table here. And really, we could just add all these together by job to get a beginning balance, but I'm just doing it by total like this. Drag those across. And let's add a totals column at the end. All right. So then that's just the sum of all of our ending costs here. Oh, let's make my little table. That look good. Okay. So if we're adding all three, so again, the ending was just the beginning of each category plus the additions into that category. And then we're just adding all those together essentially. And yeah, so there's all of our totals. It comes out to 30,750 in total. And what we want to know then is what was sold, what's still in WIP, etc. So let's see. I'm going to make it 2 little extra columns here. The first one is going to say, is this complete? And let's look here. So it tells us the cabinets for Larry, Curly, and Mo are completed. So the only one that's not completed is Joe. That's what it tells us down here. And, oh, all 3 are completed and sold. I'll just say completed and sold. You know what? Actually, I'm just going to leave that. I'm going to say complete, and then I'm going to say sold, because it could be completed and still in finished goods. So let's see what it tells us. Okay, so all 3 cabinets were completed, and okay, and all 3 were sold. So yes, 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 and no. So this one's still in WIP, and this is, all 3 of these are sold. So a few more spots for some extra journal entries. First one, let's record to move the finished, the WIP that needs to be moved over. So this is going to be into, this is finished goods inventory coming out of WIP, and the total is going to be the total of all 3 finished jobs. So that's 25,850. So all 3 of the total costs for these 3 finished jobs. First, they move into finished goods. To, let's see, record finished jobs. And then all 3 were also sold. And it has to tell us how much they were sold for. So, okay, here we go. And we can record all 3 sales just within one journal entry. We're going to have accounts receivable, sales, revenue, cost of goods sold, and finished goods inventory. And we just say to record monthly sales. Okay, let's fix these. They're a little wonky here. Sales revenue and finished goods inventory should be our credits. And so it tells us that we sold all three of these. So 15,000 plus 20,000 plus 17,000. So that was the amount that we received for these. This is our revenue. And then our cost of goods sold is just this 25,850. It's the total amount we moved into finished goods because they all sold as well. So we finished those jobs, and got them sold. Okay, the last part here asks us over/under applied overhead. If April 30 were year end, would manufacturing overhead be under or over applied, and what journal entry is needed? Okay, so this is where it's handy to have our T account that went too far that I wanted to do here. To helps us kind of see whether we're over or under applied. So actual inventory was 8,000 and applied inventory was 6,950. So we can see that we incurred more costs than we actually applied to the jobs. We only applied 6,000. We only applied 5,950. We had $1,000 as a credit balance carryover from the prior month. We only applied the 5,950 during the month, but in total, if we're at the end of the year here and closing our overhead account out, you can see that we did not assign enough costs because our actual costs were higher. And so we are under applied, and the journal entry then that we need to balance this out is going to include a credit to overhead of 1,050, and we could just I'm just going to do that up here just for the heck of it, so you can see kind of the connection there to our account. So we need to credit overhead for 1050, and we need to debit cost of goods sold for 1050. So now, in essence, if you want to kind of think about the logic here, because I think that is helpful to understand when this whole concept of over or under applied. And just for the heck of it, we'll put a little explanation and say to close manufacturing overhead. And so, in essence, like we mentioned just a moment ago, we incurred more costs than we expected, than we estimated. And this is our total based on our estimations was only 6,950. Our applied overhead using the predetermined estimated overhead rate. But we actually incurred 8,000. So we can't go back and charge the customer extra. So we have to record additional expense related to these sales, and we run that with this journal entry to cost of goods sold. So in essence, we just need to look at our overhead account, figure out whether we're under or over applied, record the entry to make it balance, basically to like close this out in essence. And then we need to debit or credit based on whether it's over or under applied cost of goods sold for that difference. So in this instance, like I said, we incurred more actual costs than we estimated, and so we're having to eat it and record extra expense to our cost of goods sold account accordingly. So kind of unfortunate. We'd rather not have that happen, but that is what happened here. So, all right, well, that's all the in-class test problems, test prep problems for Chapter 2. So stay tuned, and we'll start working on Chapter 3. I think I'm gonna put these in different videos, so you will have a whole different video for Chapter 3 and then a different video for Chapter 4. So see you in those videos. All right, thanks everybody.